a lawyer in practice that are very good in this handling, lately the JTAX case. So that is first-hand information about how to deal with the legal issues. So based on this background, I set the stage. So may I ask, maybe from the legal aspect, so what is open data, AI, and Web3, the relationship, can you just share your opinion with us?
Well, whenever we talk about open data, of course, Hong Kong is actually very unique as a city in that we actually enshrine the whole idea of having cross-border free data flow. For example, the PDPO that has been enacted past many years ago have certain provisions about restrictions of data going cross-border not enacted because of the same very nature that we really believe that borderless data, access to data is actually something fundamental to the financial markets. And this is actually very true because for a lot of financial practitioners, if you don't have good data, you can't really act on it. Now, the whole concept of adding layers on top of it is we have recently went through basically the debut of Web3 technologies as well as artificial intelligence. Web3 technologies came in the form of how a lot of people became very enthusiastic about blockchain technologies. However, there are of course lots of issues surrounding it because, for example, one of the key features of blockchain, data on blockchain, is that it's immutable, it cannot be changed once you put it on the blockchain, but the key problem is if you have incorrect data, once it's actually placed on the blockchain, what can you do about it? Because of the fact that it's you can't really change it after the fact. So it's really a lot, it has a number of problems that people can't really solve. Now, if you add on top of it artificial intelligence, which has really been around for many years actually. The concepts, the models have actually been in development for many years, but it really came about last year when OpenAI basically made the debut on ChatGPT. And one of the very first things that we realized is that the problem with large language model is hallucinations of the AI because of acting on bad data. So whenever we talk about open data, you have to be concerned about whether the data that is in the open space good or bad data. Because a lot more attention has actually been looked into right now on artificial intelligence being trained on bad data, leading to people have, well, I think we can discuss later later in this discussion, where organizations that are actually more concerned about the integrity of the data that they're building their AI on, they might opt in for synthetic data instead in a closed loop, so as to avoid hallucinations where artificial intelligence incorrectly interpret bad data. But at the end of the day, the main key is big data as well, which is needed in order for you to develop all this Web3 and AI trends.
Yeah, good. So, but no data is worse than some bad data. So that's why we need open data. So you elaborate the scenario that because Hong Kong is so well developed, and then nobody really interested in change the system, because we are all in the comfort zone. But now, that's a trend. There's necessity, to use more data, analyze the data. Otherwise, the competitiveness, of Hong Kong or the sizable financial service industry, service provider cannot catch up with the trend. So may I ask, Alex, so what's your point of view, and how do you understand this Web3? How important, this open data and Web3, the marriage of the two, technologies?
Thank you, Professor Chen. First of all, I think there have been a lot of discussion about how do we better leverage data, how do we better leverage AI, generative AI. And as a practitioners who have been working in the financial services industry for 20 years now, so I started my career as a database developer and gradually becoming a predictive solution architect. And then in the old days, I call myself data miner. So lots of dust on my face. So now we call ourselves scientists, right? Which is a very fancy title. So I think for the open AI, for the open data, first of all, it reminds me the old days, 777. Anyone heard about 777? The file permission. Okay. So you are open to read, you are open to write, and then you are open to execute, right? So in the old days when we set the file permission, right, with a 777, that means you have full access to the data, whatever you want to do. You can read, you can write, you can execute, right? So when we talk about the use of data, right, from the professional perspective, whether we have the data available for us to access, right? Say in Hong Kong, there have been a lot of different organizations like Hong Kong Science Park. They've been organizing some sort of platform. Like the Hong Kong government, they have their Hong Kong Open Data Platform. And then also yesterday, I attended an event. So Shenzhen government, now we talk about the Greater Bay Area, right? Shenzhen government, they also initiated Shenzhen Data Exchange, right? Which facilitate the 777, right? How do we, as a practitioner, how do we read, how do we contribute, and how do we make use of the data to execute, to process it, to enhance our AI model? So from the use of Web3, I think there are a lot of opportunities that we can leverage on the characteristics that of blockchain. First of all, I think right now all these open data platforms are still somehow leveraging the traditional database system, right? And then it's not that easy to read, not available. You have to apply for it. Right? And then you have to wait for a lengthy process, and then before you can access it, right? Especially for some more they call it the reasoning data. Like in the financial services industry, we have been initiating an open banking API, right? So that's an initiative HKMA, which urge all the banks, they have to open up some sort of data, right? But it's still difficult. But if we could leverage on the decentralized storage system, right, which makes it much easier for us to be able to read the data, right? And then also, so I mentioned ability to write, right? So right now, even though I myself as an individual or my organization, we would like to contribute. So the data, how do we do it? It's still difficult, right? So we have to perhaps to fill a form provided by Hong Kong Science Park, and then wait for like certain approval process for 1, 2, or 3 months now before we can contribute, right? But with the decentralized model, right, everyone can contribute, right? And then also to execute, right? So how do we make use of different forms of data provided by different data contributor, which allow us to build better model, right? As a data scientist, I build model, right? No matter it's what we call it now, we call it a traditional machine learning or NVIDIA. Yesterday, the representative from NVIDIA talked about they call it predictive AI and generative AI. But for the traditional machine learning, the more data, the more quality data, the better, right? We would like to leverage the data provided by different industries to enhance our model, right? To increase the accuracy of the model, right? And then that's something I think is still we are still working on it. But I can see for the Web3 technology there are lots of advantages, like say the decentralized storage, and then also and the ledger system, which allow us to be able to check the source of the origin of the data, and then if there are some contributors who work on top of the data, what are the changes with the general ledger capabilities. It make it very easy for us to keep track on these changes.
Okay, Alex, you mentioned about the word called open banking. I was a banker, so the open banking means maybe they're on the floor they are not from the banking. It was initiated on the European Union as early as 2015. So it's talk about because as you know in Hong Kong, so if you have one bank or more than one bank accounts from different banks, so what you have to do, you log in twice if you have two banks, or 3 times if you have 3 banks. So each bank will provide you their own format of statements. So if you are running a small business, and then you have multiple banks, and each bank have multiple accounts, then to close your business, you only have to count your revenue. You have to spend over a lot of time. So needless to say, at the year end, you have to file your tax returns. Very cumbersome. So under the European open banking regime, okay, actually they force all the banks to use one single standard, of login, one single standard of the format of the data, and most importantly, there is a single standard of governance model. So you only have to log in to one bank. If the bank is an intermediate party, that is a licensed body, then they can connect to the other banks, so that you log in only once and move the funds from one bank to the other banks. So that's open banking. So back to this, today's open data. So the issue is that despite the fact that Hong Kong government has already have this initiative, the troubles is that Alex mentioned the formats are different. The way how you access to the data are quite cumbersome, and it's not readily available. So in such a case, for a very simple task, particularly in the financial service industry in Europe, it can be a very hectic and cumbersome process that to do the same thing. So the competitiveness of Hong Kong is endangered in such a case. So I talk about this is data governance, or there's a governance model to implement open data. So may I pass the focus back to the legal side? So so it's not that easier for Hong Kong to pass a law like New York. There's no mayorship. But can we adopt the new trust model, Web3 model, as if for Bitcoin or whatever, like we do AML process. If it's off-chain, we have to use an intermediate party. But now for on-chain, everything is already on the Ethereum network, on the Bitcoin network. Can we use Web3, the new trust model, to enhance the governance model?
Well, the first comment I would have is, contrary to what Emil just said, I don't think it's very hard to pass laws anymore in Hong Kong with the recent political climate, because but the key fundamental question is, of course, just because I've always said that you can't legislate your way to a perfect world, because the laws are not meant to be guidelines. And it's quite, I find it ironic when lawmakers, whenever they see a new technology, they would just jump on the bandwagon and say, do we need to pass new laws to address these new technology, because technology is not meant to be regulated just by law, because the fundamentals are always there. For example, we have came up with the new virtual asset regulations last 2 years back. Uh, but as I have actually, because I'm a lecturer as well, I've recently invited one of our former director of public prosecution and asked him for new virtual assets related offenses. How would he go about prosecuting these new crime? And he would simply say that why bother with the new regulations when you can just prosecute on traditional fraud, which is much easier. You can copy the the precedents on legal opinion, because lawyers turns out to be the biggest plagiarizers of all things, and it carries a heavier sentence anyways. So these are all questions that do you really need to rush to legislate on these new tech? My answer has always been no, because existing laws are more than adequate. Now,
Technically, I'm with you. So
yeah.
the question is that, so if we are not passing the law, so if based on your opinion, so can we use an alternative way, say a new trust system, Web3, because we need a governance. So the ownership of data, say if I were the bus company, okay, the operator, the CEO of the bus company. So now, I want to share my data. So if I share the data without a framework or whatever, structure, so something goes wrong, it will be my fault.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, but if there's a body, if the law is passed, it will be the mayor appointed the CIO. CIO has a CDO of the government, Chief Data Officer. So the Chief Data Officer will have the ownership of the 777. Okay, he will be, or she will be, responsible, accountable, of the misuse of the data. So I will feel very comfortably to share the data with that person. So now, so if we are not, based on your opinion, if we are not passing the law, can we create such a structure using Web3?
I think what you're trying to do is can you use law to compel people to open their data? Because one of the biggest struggles that we always see is whenever we talk about data integration or moving things into digitization, because I used to be the head of IT of a private hospital before becoming a lawyer.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest struggle is, the hospital realized that they have patient data. But then again, the question comes down to who is the data owner at that particular point of time. It should be the patient, but a lot of medical practitioners will actually say that, oh, the clinic or the hospital owns the data, and they are the ones to refuse to share their data. Now, of course, so you have to overcome the resistance from the industry. That's one thing. And you also have to overcome resistance from the end users themselves. That's the other thing, because they talk about a huge paradigm shift. Take public transportation, for example, that you have mentioned. What type of data are they collecting? Because if they're talking about foot traffic data, for example, we will ask the question of, is it sufficiently anonymized so that the data, so that the corporate entity can actually say that they are able to deal with the data and move on to the open data format? Because if it's not de-anonymized, then the data actually, as you will have rightly pointed out, belongs to the individual. And that will lead to a can of worms in the PDPO, for example, where you have significant breaches of data protection principles that the CEO of the company will actually be liable for. So all these issues are, of course, something that you have to overcome. Now, take the US, for example. When Obama was in power, he actually made the move to basically legislate Obamacare. One of the key features of it is forcing hospitals to digitize their data. Now that's an example of using law to compel people to move data into the digital realm, and the same framework you're contemplating is going to be used to basically move into Web3. The last thing we want to do is rush into this prospect, because there are certain risks that need to be addressed. For example, certain data, a lot of end users will not be happy about having that data moved into the Web3 space because they can't change it, they can't remove it. Take bad credit score, for example. That is not something you want to be there forever.
But we still have to solve that problem. So now,
Absolutely.
yeah, the problem is that, okay, make it as simple as that, so I'm the CEO of that public transport company. I want to share the data. So if the law is no such a piece of law or protection or governance practice, how can I share the data? Can I just use Web3? So because say if I use Web3, what does it mean? It's not my data. Okay, Web3 means community. So there's a vehicle. Okay, there's a system. So you as a passenger, so you press a button and you just share, without disclosing who you are, share the location of this individual passenger, and then store it, on in a database, so-called database, but it's on-chain. Then it's nothing to do with the transport company just provide the structure, okay, for everybody to share the data. So if we talk about health data, so my question, so don't you know that there's a country called Estonia in up there close to Russia. So I think in the past 10 years at least, they store their health record on blockchain already. So the ownership of that health record is not the clinic, not the country, but individuals. So each of us, like how we move our chairs in, is the individuals' right or their own choice, how the data to be shared. So back to, once again, can we adopt, for Hong Kong, for example, can we just learn from them and use, in order to share the data? Is it one of the way, or you agree or disagree with this motion?
No, I think one of the funniest things is you pointed out Estonia. So Estonia has always been at the forefront of new legislation regarding the blockchain, but they always never really made it on the map because they came up with the first set of legislation for actually crypto exchange, for example, back in 2018. But then again, people really beat it down because they're former, what they call Eastern Bloc nations, and there lacks credibility. So Hong Kong, of course, have this reputation as being the premier financial center. But then again, with that reputation comes a number of issues. For example, even if you manage to anonymize data, there are actually techniques out there where you can cross-reference data, where you can de-anonymize the data. For example, they try to do that in New York. They have certain public data requests that you can make, and you basically get a list of all the taxi cab driver with Middle Eastern name, Mohammed, Abdul, etc. And at the same time, you can actually get traffic data saying, because Muslims have to pray at a certain time of the day, and you see where they take breaks at. And if you cross-reference those data, you can actually de-anonymize the data set to basically identify how many Muslim cab drivers are there in New York City. So basically, it's actually a cross-reflection of how to legislate and fail in an epic manner when you put certain data online. Now, the banks, of course, banks actually relies heavily on bank secrecy. That's why I always say crypto fraud is far easier to trace than financial fiat fraud, because for cybercrime committed using fiat currencies, for example, you have to get multiple layers of disclosure orders just to dig to the deep of where the current assets are located. On the other hand, crypto fraud, everything is recorded on the blockchain and you can't remove it. And that's why people always get caught when they try to launder and cash out the virtual assets, because at the end of the day, you need to go to a centralized exchange to really cash it out. And that's why the hackers that successfully made over millions of Bitcoin in the early days are all caught.
Excuse me, so your answer is yes or no up till now. So
the short answer is no, because there are just too many conflicting
it's
rules.
no. So how can we move on then? Say we are not going to learn from New York. So
AI,
no law is passed.
AI is actually the solution because AI can actually do multiple rounds of data anonymization and test whether it is sufficiently anonymized that it's immune to de-anonymization. So Web3 is actually a combination approach.
Okay, so then the focus is to our AI expert, Alex. So the same question, Alex. So with or without the legal consideration, okay, from a AI expert. So if you want to access to more data, will the Web3 that neutrality or the whatever infrastructure benefit, will you benefit from it?
Yes, as a practitioner, of course, I would like to get as much data access as possible. And it's now still, honestly, not easy. So I think from the practitioner perspective, we, of course, we would love to have government or the policy makers to support us to be able to.
But you are saying that Hong Kong government is not supportive at the moment?
They are supportive. They are supportive. They are supportive. Yeah. So they've been having like an open data platform.
How can they be more supportive then? May I ask specifically?
I think, say, New York is one of the example, and then even in China, they've been really proactively connecting with different industry players,
Yes.
like the Shenzhen Data Exchange I just mentioned, right? So they really try to connect with a lot of private companies and also public companies. To start with the state-owned companies, they try to incentivize them or kind of guide them to open up some of the state-owned company data assets to start with into that data exchange form. And then I think it's about carrot and stick, right? So if there's such a law that, let's say, the open banking data assets, right?
It's a law.
It's a law.
So,
it's a law.
So back to the first question then, say Hong Kong, can we embrace open data without passing any law? That's the question. So if there's no law, then can we use the alternative way, embrace Web3? Otherwise, how can we move on? How can the trust system, be built, without passing a new piece of law or without embracing Web3? So, what's your opinion?
Or maybe not law, but maybe some sort of guidance. Like from HKMA, say from the financial services industry.
It won't work. Guidance, say how can the guidance solve my problem as a public transport operator? Guidance. So that's mean I can share, but I cannot share. So if something goes wrong, it will be back onto my shoulder. I don't think I'm not a so sorry. I'm the moderator, but it seems that it doesn't make sense to be guidance.
So I'm more familiar with the financial services industry, right? So say HKMA, right? So
yes.
they had all CEOs of the banking company, they had to listen to the guidance.
Yes.
So they have to open up. There are different phases, like
you are using the HKMA guidance. So there's guidance, it's more than a guidance.
Yeah. So first of all, stage one, all banks they have to open up their ported data as an API. That's the stage one.
Yes.
The second stage is all banks they have to open up an access right on the account balance.
Yes.
Anomalous account balance. So there must be a way that the bank they have to provide for the fintech companies to be able to apply for that access.
But they can open it in multiple formats.
Yes. This is another problem, right? So, but which I think if there will be much better standardization, leveraging the blockchain network with more standardization on data standardization, which will make the AI developers much easier to really to consume or to consolidate uh, from different data providers, including banks or even though other companies. Which right now, even though there's such a way for us to access data, it's still very time consuming to process the data.
Well, I'm not a fan of the open API approach because up till now, according to the timeline, phase 3, phase 4 should be finished a couple of years back. But well, phase 2, phase 3 means we can move the fund uh, between banks, but we cannot use open API to move anything with ease. So without, my opinion, without a personal law, not the guidance, the bank will not work, according to one standard. So without standard, I think it's the data governance or the open data governance is not cannot be in place. So Joshua said, no, well, I keep asking you, because I just
but you know why there are different standards, right?
Standard.
So, yeah.
Governance.
Yes.
We need standard.
But you know the reason why there are so many different standards for the banks is because I'll give you an example. When I was still in IT, I used to ask the system analysts, why are you using ancient programming language to program these programs for the hospital to use? And the real reason was because it's artificially creating job security. Because the harder it is,
Human nature.
Exactly, human nature. Because the harder it is because it's no longer taught in school, and so none of the new programmers can compete for the job.
Now we have AI. You mentioned that, right?
Exactly.
So we solve this problem then.
But AI is not there to steal your job. The person that knows how to use AI is the person to steal it.
Yeah, then I can use AI to transform my Node.js code back into the Java, and we solve the problem.
No, that would be another problem because early last year we have a certain Korean company where the engineers decided to use OpenAI as a way to perfect their codes and end up uploading their entire proprietary code onto the internet. And I believe that team is in a lot of trouble for doing that.
Wow, this is well, you always have a lot of the negative side, we scare us off.
Well, because I am also in risk management.
Yes.
But with every single risk, there's always countermeasures. So my always key is you need to be aware of the risk in order to basically take the appropriate action. So basically, you need internal policies to govern how you interact with open data.
But up till now, my job, I don't think I'm doing my job right then. So please enlighten us. So if we have a problem to pass the law, like the other countries or cities, okay, now we have a problem. I think we agree that it is not easy, okay? Even though we can easily pass a law, but we cannot find the CIO and CDO, there's no such a organization structure in the Hong Kong government, to take that task yet.
You're basically asking us government to take on the risk of if things
No, we just follow, well, I'm not asking the government, there's a best practice in UK, in US that we are not going to follow. Are we?
No, so I'll give you another example. So
Okay.
I have heard horror stories before where a law firm got intervened by the Law Society after an audit because the Law Society accused the partner of mishandling clients' funds. And they say that basically clients' funds are missing. Most of the time whenever a law firm gets intervened, the partners lose their license and they get bankrupt in the process. So halfway through the bankruptcy, the Law Society came back up and say, "Oops, we did a wrong. We messed up on the audit."
There are two levels. Two levels. So if Hong Kong as a whole has no open data, so Hong Kong as a whole will bankrupt. So if Hong Kong bankrupt, there will be no such a problem anymore. So the problem is back to the fundamental issues that no data for Alex company to analyze. Then if there will be no data, to be analyzed, then as a client, I will just move my service company or whatever, okay, to another city. So the fundamental issue, as we keep going circle, that we need open data. I think you agree. So
Yes.
we have to implement open data in Hong Kong. So with my limited understanding, the first one is follow the other cities, pass that law, okay. The other one is that, okay, if we have problem to pass that law in time, can we use AI and Web3? You mentioned AI, okay? I bet we are insane now. Then, if we use AI, but AI has no data to train, the AI engine, so it will be a deadlock.
Now, that's where the interesting part is.
Yes.
Because a Bloomberg report came out recently saying that a lot of companies are actually testing a combination of using both open data and synthetic data in order to train the AI. So that the synthetic data is basically as a baseline to prevent the AI being trained on bad data. So a combination approach will be very novel. Now, I don't think the government have actually factored in which aspects to use synthetic data when you're doing open data related projects.
Okay, so now the expert. So can we just use the synthetic data, to enhance the Hong Kong, model in such a case? If open data is not ready yet, and open data is, but it's so hard to gather, as Alex you said. So can we enhance it, or how many percent you believe that synthetic data plus the limited amount of open data?
In the ideal world, yes, of course, I would like to get the access of open data. If the government can support us, then I believe it will also enhance our position, like competitive edge as our international financial hub in the region, right? So, and I think since I've been working on it for quite a while, right? So data access, data quality is always an issue for me. And what I can start with it, usually to start with whatever I can get, I start with the version 1, and then I keep enhancing it. So for the model B1, I will have a very clear documentation of what data I can use and what data I cannot use it yet, and what will be the strategy for us to be able to acquire the access of data. Sometimes so as a private company, so we have a data strategy like what data we own, right? So which is internal data, what data we can buy, right? There are lots of data provider we can pay for it, get
Market data
for the market, right? They're not open, we have to pay for it, but still somehow we can get some access of the data. And then what data we need to earn. So there's no way we can, even if we want it, there's no way we can buy. But how do we earn it? How do we create, say there are lots of different organizations, they try to create their own membership system, their own app, trying to capture more about your data, like a lot of shopping malls. Like nowadays they created an app, but the app you have to agree on a lot of things. You have to agree on your GPS, you have to agree on a lot of different things, and then you have to register your car place number. Then they know. But with also the ecosystem, they know from their computer vision logic, they know what cars are you driving. So that their way to earn the data.
So in such a case, for your own company, you are creating you earn the data from your own customer. So it's a pillar. So if your counterparties or competitors, if we come up with a new trust system, okay, will you consider, or your boss will consider, if there's a new trust system that you share the data with the so-called competitor, like the open banking, open insurance, or whatever. Is there a benefit or a
That's a very good question. So I think there are lots of insurance companies, they have already shared some sort of data about the data platform provided by Science Park. And it's always about like what are the incentive, what are the business case, why do you want to do that?
Yeah. The
Right?
value.
The value. So I think in Hong Kong or in the Chinese community, it's still a question like, why do you want to do that? Is it more for the CSR purpose? Just now we discussed about CSR. Or is there any like, there are certain arrangement between some bank, between some companies they can partner together? Like, not my current company, but there are lots of companies, they form up a strategic data partnership, like HKDB Mall, or Citibank, or AA Store. It's a strategic partnership so that they share the data through the agreement so that they can exchange it, so that they get their benefit.
So back to the core of today's sharing. You talk about the sharing. You talk about the agreement. So in Web3, we have the community. In Web3, we have smart contracts. In Web3, we share the data without the intermediate party. So I trust not that I'm not trusting you as my service provider. I'm trusting that community. That that trust system, the trustless system, so-called, can protect my interest. So will there be a solution? So if according to the expert, so can we create such a thing? So what stops us from learn from this crypto system? That we can share this so-called open data in such a manner. You are doing that task already to earn the data, but can we just move that practice from your own consortium or ally to more open platform?
Maybe I can start first.
Okay.
I think for the Web3 technology, it definitely help us form a better community sharing data, like with the smart contract, right? So we can define the rules and with the very clear conditions, how do we share the data, how do we execute it, right, between entities, right? And then with the smart contract system, even though without like a third party or someone centralized party to authorize or some sort of law, so if with the predefined logic, it allows us to form a certain agreement. That's one thing. The second thing, I think, is about the tokenization. So yesterday, I attended another forum. So because one of the challenges that as a practitioner we are getting is even though the company share the data, we don't have the joining key. So bus company provide this data, and then insurance company provide this data, and then bank provide this data, but we never had such a joining key which we will be able to tell all these activities were about same individual, because we've done the TMI, right? But is there any mechanism we can tokenize them, and then with a hashing mechanism, we can make use of the hash key so that we can link up these data? It will help us to really to better identify, not identify, better leverage the data in our model. Right, the tokenization is one thing, and then also the incentive. Right nowadays we have a lot of like different token. Right, and
I share the data as a passenger. So if I share the data, I can earn a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
okay,
as a call, right? To incentivize them to share the data. It could be also a way out, I believe.
Okay, so do you agree or disagree?
Or you don't talk about incentivization, of course, then we can take a look back at what China is doing, because you mentioned that data asset exchange, for example. One of the key features of the data asset exchange is actually to support this effort by the Chinese government, which came up with a very creative way to say that you are dealing with valuation of the companies. So they have actually passed guidelines as to how to basically, all these companies have data, but it's not built into their assets as a value at this time. So there's a move into valuation of data being held by companies, and the idea is that it might improve the P&L
Yeah.
or the overall booking value
The driver.
of that
Yeah.
company all of
Yeah.
a sudden. Of course, whether it's internationally accepted or not is another story altogether. But these are efforts on incentivization that you can see that countries are taking in order to basically at least nudge companies to treat the data in a more valuable manner. And once you have basically attached value to the data, then they become more palatable to trade it, put it on platform, on chain it. But you need to take the first step first because a lot of companies are just having dead data at the end of the day.
Right. Good. So now we have a, in general, understand. Okay, we still have a certain mileage, to go for this dream or this initiative to make good use of Web3 as the infrastructure to enhance the governance model of open data. So I still believe that the easiest way is just we are not reinventing the wheel to pass the law as if we just follow the best practice, but we do not have mayor in Hong Kong, and then without mayorship, there's no ownership, there's no accountability. So it's not about legal. So we agree that. So we do not need. Well, we can easily pass the law, but even though we pass the law, we don't know how to allocate that ownership to which department, which service provider in the government. So we talk about perhaps Web3, the trustless model, the technology called smart contract, and the tokenization, to as a field to motivate people to share the data, so that when they share the data, they have return directly. So open data usually is a return indirectly because city will be smarter than in return it will be create more value to individuals or the whole community. So I think now for these 2 rounds, we understand basic, we understand the problems, and we understand that we have to move on by looking for more alternative, to make Hong Kong the smartest city. So may I now open the floor, so that please John, share my mic.
Thanks. A very interesting presentation and discussion from the 3 of you. I do have a few points. The issue about re-identification risk, I think, is a major problem for important and interesting data sets like the hospital authority data. So, but I think I don't agree at all that AI can be a solution to avoid re-identification risk. I think all the evidence is, so all the attempts with synthetic data, the problem is, if you remove the privacy risk through synthetic data, you also lose some of the structure, and hence you lose some of the value of analysis. Those are 2 sides of the same coin. So there is a model that works, and the government already has that model. Both the hospital authority and census have a secure enclave. In other words, you need a trusted third party to assess the risk of the analysis and to make sure that the privacy risks are handled. So the government has a model that works quite well. The problem is, of course, neither the hospital authority nor census has any interest in supporting commercial activity.
Exactly.
So that's a different issue. It's not that we don't have a structure. But I'm sorry, I cannot believe AI is a solution, and I don't believe the anonymization works. It can only work in rather simple cases. The other issue is incentives. So incentives, I agree entirely, are effective at the company level. But individual incentives lead to bias, and it frankly doesn't work. There are plenty of examples to show it doesn't work. The other issues, there are other structural problems which I think are solvable, which you haven't mentioned. So I agree entirely that for many laws, existing laws are insufficient, frankly, this is creativity. But the issue even if we don't go as far as the open data law in the US, actually is problematic in some ways, but I don't want to go into that. The government has had, in the Law Reform Commission, public record proposals and access to information laws for many years, which they still refuse to release or explain why they haven't released them. Those two laws would make an enormous difference because there's two very different issues. We're talking about transport providers. Frankly, we don't need a law. I agree entirely. The government has the regulatory power, and that's how the Transport Department eventually, after a long time, made sure that the data became available. Because it's frankly not about personal privacy risk. It's about the commercial interests of transport providers and, frankly, accountability. They do not want to be held accountable for when the bus or train or whatever it doesn't turn up on time. That's the structure. And even more, the problem is the government itself. So many parts of the government, and we can give a lot of credit to Census and Lands Department, have done a good job. But there are many other parts of the government, which I will not list because I've become very unpopular with certain government departments, refuse to make their data open. We need a law. We need that pressure, and there is plenty of evidence. Almost everywhere else in the world, except Hong Kong, has a public records law. Almost everywhere in the world, except Hong Kong, has an access to information law. And we need those two laws. So I really do think those two laws are important. I agree that most of the others are not, right? And then the last issue is that sometimes there are structural issues which can be solved. So if we talk about, say, e-health records in Hong Kong is far ahead of anywhere else in the world in terms of what's implicitly already in the e-health record system because essentially almost everybody uses the public hospitals. However, the private sector is largely absent from e-health records. Now, part of it's about the doctors not wanting to share, but that's not the only part. There's one part that I raised in LegCo, the government promised to fix and still have not fixed. As a consumer, when it comes to your e-health record, I would not advise anybody to click agree. Why? Because if you agree, you have no say in which of your health data gets shared.
Somewhat like the Facebook, information. Once you click,
and once you click, everything gets shared, and you can have no say. So if there's some of your personal health data you consider sensitive, you cannot stop anybody from seeing it. Only the government can choose who gets to see what.
But
you have no say.
Will be harmful to my health? That's the issue. If I select,
No. It's not only harmful. So I'll give an example.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have ever had a sexually transmitted disease,
okay,
and you have gone to the Department of Health Sex Disease Clinic, that information is inside the system. Once you agree to click, that means that any doctor you go to see can see that information. If the government chooses to share that, you have no say. Now, it's true. If I'm going to, if I have an emergency and I'm going into the hospital authority, I want that doctor to see my record. But if I'm just going because I've got the flu, do I want them to necessarily see everything of my personal records? No. But the government has failed to address that issue, and that's the sticking point. So vaccination records, yes, it's very convenient. You can easily access it in the system, and you want your doctor to see if you've had COVID and how many times. So that's a problem that's solvable by the government, and they have chosen not to solve it, and LegCo, frankly, doesn't know enough to make them fix it. So I think there are specific issues that can be fixed.
Beautiful. Now we have a clearer picture, of what we have discussed. So I think we can accept 2 more questions. So if there's no question, then I will ask the last questions, to the panelists. So talking about the takeaway, now we learned that it's still problematic. We understand that Hong Kong is quite different from the other cities, but fundamentally we are quite different, okay? Because we are during the transitional period, and we have a political, inherited the issue. We have this trust issue, So under these circumstances, may I ask, say if we really have to, make the change. So we talk about education. What kind of information, what kind of steps, that we have to educate the general public. This is about the takeaway. So maybe in short, you share about your opinion, how we can move on because we are educators. So that we sometimes we are doing this job, for free. What's the reason? Because, in order to make the change. So while education, anything that we can make Hong Kong better while education, can you share a little bit, so that we can learn from you, Alex first.
First of all, I think this is an amazing opportunity. Thank you so much for the organizer to organize this kind of events. I think the community has been pushing really hard. This is the second year of the Open Data Forum, right? I think it's a very good start. And I think, first of all, from the government perspective, if government can provide some more sponsorship to the event, right, they will allow us to really to reach out the much more targeted audience, right? The targeted audience, including the potential data providers, right? So they are different from the private company perspective or from the different government department perspective. They can have a much deeper understanding of the data literacy, and then also are willing to provide more data, right? Targeted audience from these, like the chief data officer from these companies, right? So that they are more willing to provide the data. And then also targeted audience on data users and the educators, right? Including university or even from the secondary school. I think data literacy or now AI literacy, we have to really to work together and then to develop our kids, right, with that mentality, right, about the data usage, about the data collaboration, etc. And then it will be also great if in the recent document provided by the education department, they started to have some terms like the data literacy, and they are trying to, with the education department, trying to embed some sort of interest class for the secondary school student to have more opportunities to understand what does it mean by data or AI, right? Or maybe even though, or even to try to embed some curriculums, trying to integrate the existing curriculum, like in the university, I believe we still teach traditional database, right? But the blockchain technology, like the distributed ledger system, how do we embed that curriculum together with the existing the traditional database system is important. And then last but not least, so I read that it's really if the government and the policy makers can, law is good, but if not law, trying to take a more proactive role or to create such a department or authority with the government chief data officer, right, to coordinate, to be accountable, right, that will help Hong Kong to strengthen our competitive edge. So I saw a lot of reports, like in terms of the AI adoption index. Honestly, we are going a bit slower than what we want to reach, comparing with some cities in the region, right? So I believe this is my 2 cents.
Okay, good. So one click my mind is we have to start education of data literacy young. It's somewhat like we send our children to ballet school or to to play the piano young or foreign languages. So for data, the same. So because of time constraint, Joshua, maybe can you please give us in short, about your last, about your opinions?
Well, aside from the fact that I teach postgraduate, so I'm biased towards postgraduate level teaching. I think culture starts from the top.
Yes.
So if you ask any of the C-suites in Hong Kong, what do they still remember from being taught in high school? A lot of them, they would say they have already returned back to their teacher, or universities for that matter. So a lot of the education can also be coming in from a professional level to those who are already in authority, because adoption does start at the top. And if they are willing to carry the culture, be educated, be well aware of it, then it makes it a lot more sense. Same goes for legislative council members. A lot of them are trying to make laws about technologies that they have no understanding of whatsoever. So sufficient briefing sessions, which we don't really see in Hong Kong, will actually be quite crucial to educate those who are actually making the decisions into at least knowing what they're trying to make a decision about.
Beautiful. So actually we are making a change right here. So the quick fix, we have to inject, those data literacy, syllabus onto the higher education. In long run, we have to plant the seeds so that the youngsters, they are, more, with the certain level of understanding of data usage. Okay, thank you very much. So the time is up, and then thanks for your time, and see you next round. And then I pass the stage back to Yvette, and then thank you.